Welcome to Brain Secrets in the Age of the Brain. The name of this show came from emerging bits about brain function that are released after brain studies are completed. I like to call these bits Brain Secrets. Asia Hudson, assistant producer of Brain Secrets, along with videographer Grant Gilmore, have returned with more questions for Ask Dr. Taylor. Which means, of course, that Asia will be on my side of the camera again. Well, Asia, welcome to Brain Secrets. You're back on this side of the camera.
Thanks for having me again. I'm never going to get tired of sitting here with you.
Well, I'm never going to get tired of doing this because the questions are all so different. And it's good for my brain. I tell people, answering these questions, I'm sure, is age-proofing my brain.
Right.
So, this episode of Ask Dr. Taylor Out on the Streets, was there anything unusual or different about this one?
So normally, I have to be a little bit more charismatic and get people to be interested in me and kind of be more, I feel like, flamboyant with my asking of people to come and talk to me. But this time, surprise, we were in Miami, and people were literally lining up. It was so different than anything else we had ever experienced. Normally, I'm used to having to throw out a line and reel them back in. And this time people were like, what you guys doing? I want to ask a question and answer a question. So it was really nice and it made me feel confident because I was in a new city and I was like, what's the culture going to be like? And it was way more welcoming than I expected.
You know, that's such a good point, Asia, because countries have personalities, states have personalities, and cities have personalities. And so sometimes one thing that works in one city falls totally flat in another one. And it's really important to understand that that's the culture. And we don't know the culture of every city, especially when you just walk in cold and start saying, does anybody want to ask a brain function specialist a question?
Right.
And half of them don't even know what a brain function specialist means. So was there one question you're looking forward to having me answer?
There were so many good ones.
All right, then you don't have to tell me any if you don't want to.
I'll wait.
Okay, you'll wait. Grant, are you ready to show us the clip so I can start answering these questions?
Yep, we got it all set up.
Oh, you're good. Thank you.
Hey y'all, my name is Asia Hudson. Welcome to Ask Dr. Taylor. We're here in the streets of Miami. We've never been here before for another segment of Ask Dr. Taylor. As I've said before, it's very nerve-wracking for me to be in new areas, to ask new people new questions, because the culture of talking to people is different based on which city you're in and where you go to. So we'll see what the culture is like in Miami. And here we go. The weather's nice. I think people want to ask some questions. We work with a brain function specialist, so we're here in the streets and we have to ask everybody a question. And the question is, if you had to ask a brain function specialist a question, what would you ask her?
Brain functioning. Why we think like that?
Why we think like what? Let's be a little bit more specific. Why we think like what? You ready?
Why we are a creature of habit?
That's a really interesting question.
Why we are a creature of habit?
Why are we creatures of habit?
Why is change so hard for us at the end of the day?
I love that.
We know what we want, but we settle for what's less.
Hey, that's
every
a
time.
fact.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. What would your question be?
My question
They
would
can't
be,
agree.
what is it about the human existence that causes us to be riddled with anxiety? Dr. Taylor, that's my question.
Why are we creatures of habit? And why is change so hard for us? Humans are creatures of habits because habits are efficient, fast, and save brain-body energy. Why is it change so hard? Because the brain must override and interrupt a habit or create a new one. which either way takes time and energy. Sometimes a good habit is unhelpful in specific situations only. For example, when confronted by danger, the brain typically initiates a fight or flight response. If you are suddenly confronted by a large and potentially dangerous wild animal, however, fighting is not an option, and running is exactly the wrong thing to do if you plan to live another day. In that situation, the brain is also designed to get your attention and tell you that a typically learned habit is not in your best interest in this situation. What is it about the human existence that causes us to be riddled with anxiety? Well, anxiety is a form of fear. The news is filled with tragic and sensational news because it sells. If you watch a lot of news, that is what is being absorbed into your conscious and subconscious minds. Parts of the parietal lobe and the temporal lobe help the brain to evaluate its environment. The brain switches between these two different neural networks, whereby one is triggered when we perceive a situation as positive, and the other is activated when we perceive it as negative. The areas apparently speak to each other and interpret the weight or importance of the situation in order to decide which one will be switched on and which one will be switched off. Flooding the brain with anxiety-producing information can lead to anxious rumination and perhaps a diagnosis even of anxiety disorder, because more negatives are going into the brain than positives.
Hi. We got to ask you the same question. It's the only question we ask. The question is, if you had to ask a brain function specialist a question about brain function, what would you ask?
A question about brain function, what would I ask? Probably ask, I gotta think about that one. That's a good question.
You didn't prepare him for the question?
He didn't tell me nothing. He just brought me.
Oh, good point. Okay, it's only fair.
That's good.
Ask why we think more negative stuff than we think positive stuff. That'd probably be the only thing I ask. Why we think more negative stuff instead of positive stuff.
Solid question. Why do we think more negative things over positive things?
Well, the short answer is because of the body's automatic alarm system. When something stressful happens, and most negative things are stressful, the brain releases cortisol, a steroid hormone. It's designed to warn you about imminent danger, triggering changes in your brain and body to prepare you for a fight or flight response. This all happens in a nanosecond, 1/1000th of a second. If you immediately assume the worst is going to happen, that potentiates the stress response and keeps the cortisol pumping. It's so easy to get into the habit of triggering this alarm system simply by thinking negative thoughts. Now, thinking positively is easy when something good happens. The brain, however, is capable of choosing to replace a negative thought with a positive, thankful thought, which releases dopamine, the feel-better chemical. Therefore, thinking positive, thankful thoughts is an antidote to negativity. But this process requires conscious choice. You choose.
I would like to ask, with lie and perms, how does that affect my brain? If that does affect it, because I always wonder that. Like, is that why we're all on a natural movement? Like, how do chemicals affect our scalp, and does that have anything? Does it get through to our brain?
That's a great question. I'm gonna back it up another step because it still seems loud. No, you're good. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna reiterate your question. How do the chemicals from putting products like perms in our hair, like lye
That is
and other
a
chemicals,
wonderful
impact
question.
our brain, if at all?
Yes, exactly, yes. I really do want to know that.
I want to know that too now. Okay. Thank you so much. Right, okay.
That is a wonderful question. All substances that touch the skin have the potential to be pulled into the body in at least 3 ways. Directly through the pores, by following a hair shaft down to the follicle, and through following lipid or fat pathways between cells. In terms of an impact to the brain, permanents and relaxers contain many chemicals that can seep into the body. And once they're able to enter the lymph fluid or the blood, they can spread to any part of the brain and the body. The Centers for Disease Prevention and Control reported that, and this is a quote, skin contact represents a significant route of exposure for chemicals that have the potential to be absorbed through the skin and that can subsequently cause systemic effects, including, but not limited to, neurotoxicity, cancers, and effects on the reproductive system. None of this is great for the brain.
Okay, so I have a question. How does depression really affect your mind, like your brain? Because I say that to say, people say, you know, when you get depression, you lose memory. So I would like to know, are you going to ask him like a real scientist or like what's going on?
No, she's a real brain function.
I really
Yeah.
want to know.
She got PhD and everything.
I definitely want to know. Like,
That's a great question.
I don't have a PhD in everything.
I didn't know that depression could affect your memory.
It does.
Another good question. Depression literally can change the brain. It can alter the neuron pathways along which information travels, interrupting the clear transmission of messages, resembling an internet that keeps dropping. It can alter the synapses or spaces between neurons that can interfere with communication between thinking cells. It can shrink the size of the hippocampus, that search engine that moves information from short-term into long-term storage and then retrieves it when you want to recall it, hopefully. The hippocampus is said to be the most susceptible brain organ to stress. If memories do not get moved into long-term storage and you lose the data, there's no way to retrieve it. As the hippocampus shrinks with subsequent depressive episodes, its search engine function may falter and it cannot locate even information that was moved into long-term memory. Fortunately, the hippocampi, and yes, there are 2 of them, comprise one of the few parts of the brain that researchers have discovered can actually create new cells. That's one reason for getting treatment for depression, and it is so critical. The sooner the better. It's also important to learn effective stress management strategies, as stress can trigger anxiety as well as depression.
Did you know that if you try to repress bad memories, you're repressing good memories because the brain doesn't know a good memory from a bad memory? When you start repressing it, you start losing your memory. So
I gotta tell y'all, we've been to a few cities doing this, and this is the fastest we've ever gotten so many great questions and input.
If I recall the question right, it was, I heard that the brain doesn't know the difference between good and bad memories. So when you repress bad memories, you also are repressing good memories. Well, if the brain did not know the difference between good and bad memories, it would repress either all of them or none of them. memories are believed filed somewhat diffusely throughout the brain rather than into just one giant memory bank. Good thing, because if a brain injury knocked out that one giant memory bank, you might not even remember who you are. When the brain does repress a painful memory, think of it as using your thumb to put pressure on a ripe plum. The area of pressure will naturally be strongest right under your thumb, but all around that point, there is an area of lighter pressure. So depending on what was stored in that surrounding area, you might repress good memories as well as the bad memories.
And that's it for another episode of Ask Dr. Taylor. We took to the streets of Miami. We got some phenomenal questions. A lot of people wanted to participate. I was very surprised that the culture here was so welcoming and inquisitive. A lot of people wanted to stop and see what we were doing. Dr. Taylor, I cannot wait for you to answer the fabulous questions that we got today here on the streets of Miami.
I like it when you end it that way. That was great fun, Asia.
Awesome.
You really do a good job with this. And you know, there's no way that I would be good at that type of thing. Every brain has their giftedness. And once you learn what it is, then you don't keep trying to do things that really your brain is not good at doing or is not interested in. So we make a really good team.
I was just about to say that exact same thing. You have the brain function specialty, and I have like the in the streets, hey, you want to talk to me? Let's be friends specialty.
I love it. And I'm fine when people come up to me, but I'm not fine standing there saying, would you like to come and talk to me? That would not work for my brain. So we did the questions. Was there one that really stood out to you?
I would have to say when the girl asked about lye and dyes and putting chemicals on your head to alter your hair, that is something I have literally never thought of. And I remember being a kid and my mom would perm my hair and it would burn. And even as an adult, I never thought like, was that burning my brain? You know? So I'm really happy about the way that you answered that question because it's one of those questions I didn't even know I needed to answer to.
You know, isn't that life? We don't know what we don't know. And what we don't know can get us.
Or can be answered by Dr. Arlene Taylor.
Well, sometimes, but not necessarily all the time. All right, thanks again for another fun episode. I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Of course. Thank you for having me again.
And thank you, our viewers, for watching. I'm pleased when others enjoy talking about the brain because everything begins in the brain. That's just one brain secret. Until next time, be good to your brain, feed it healthy food, and thank it for helping you live your life.